Marco Santini did not do it gently. He built empires with iron fists, closed deals that made grown men sweat, and commanded loyalty through fear wrapped in expensive suits. He was the kind of man who walked into rooms and owned them before saying a word. Fathers warned their daughters, rivals crossed streets to avoid him. And yet, every night, at exactly 7:43 p.m., he walked through his penthouse door and became someone else entirely. A father. Daddy. The voice was small, bright, and the only sound in the world that could make Marco Santini's shoulders drop from their perpetual tension. Isabella, 6 years old, dark curls that bounced when she ran, eyes too wise for someone who still believed in fairy tales, the center of his entire universe. She crashed into his legs the moment he stepped inside, tiny arms wrapping around his knees. He lifted her effortlessly, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Did you have a good day, Principessa?" "Miss Elena taught me about butterflies," Isabella said, wriggling in his arms. "And I drew you a picture, but it's in my room and I can't reach it because it's on the high shelf and—" "Breathe," Marco said, smiling despite himself. "We'll get it after dinner. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you." Isabella squirmed down and grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the kitchen. That's when he noticed the smell. Something warm, something that didn't come from his private chef's usual repertoire. Chicken, garlic, herbs. He rounded the corner and stopped. A woman stood at his stove, wooden spoon in hand, hair pulled into a loose ponytail that showed the elegant line of her neck. She wore simple clothes, jeans, a soft cream sweater that hung slightly off one shoulder and moved around his kitchen like she'd been doing it for years instead of 3 weeks. Sophia Chen, the nanny. She hadn't noticed him yet. She was too focused on whatever was in the pan, humming something under her breath while Isabella climbed onto a stool to watch. "Is it ready yet?" Isabella asked, leaning dangerously far over the counter. "Almost, sweet girl. But if you fall off that stool, your dad's going to fire me on the spot." "He won't fire you," Isabella said with absolute certainty. "You're the best nanny ever," Sophia laughed. The sound was soft, genuine, and did something strange to Marco's chest. "You say that because I let you have chocolate chips in your pancakes. And because you read the princess's voices right. And because you don't get mad when I ask a million questions. And because—" Okay, Sophia said, laughing harder now. "You're going to make me cry into the chicken." Marco cleared his throat. Sophia jumped, spinning around. The wooden spoon clattered against the counter. Her eyes, warm brown, framed by lashes that needed no makeup, went wide. "Mr. Santini, I'm sorry. I thought you'd be later. Isabella said she was hungry, and the chef had the night off, and I didn't think you'd mind if I just—" "It's fine," Marco said. But it wasn't fine. Because he was staring at her in a way he'd trained himself not to stare at staff. At anyone, really. Not since Isabella's mother had walked out 4 years ago, leaving a note and a necklace on the nightstand. Sophia Chen was the 4th nanny he'd hired in 2 years. The others had quit. Too many rules. Too much security. Too many questions they weren't allowed to ask about the men in dark suits who came to the penthouse at odd hours. But Sophia had stayed for 3 weeks now. Quiet. Professional. Good with Isabella in ways that felt effortless instead of performative. And right now, in his kitchen, with flour on her cheek and Isabella beaming at her like she'd hung the moon, Sophia looked like she belonged. "Dinner's almost ready," Sophia said, turning back to the stove. "I made extra if you're hungry." Marco glanced at Isabella, who was watching him with those 2 smart eyes. "Daddy, you have to eat with us," Isabella said. Miss Sophia made the chicken the way Nana used to. His chest tightened. His mother had been gone for 3 years. Isabella barely remembered her. "How do you know how my mother cooked?" Marco asked quietly. Sophia's shoulders tensed. She stirred the pan carefully. "Isabella showed me a photo once," she said. "In the hallway. There were lemons on the table in the background. She said her Nana always made chicken with lemons and rosemary. I thought—" she hesitated. "I thought maybe it would be nice." Something in Marco's throat closed. He walked slowly to the counter and sat on one of the stools. Isabella climbed into his lap immediately, small hands patting his chest. "You're staying for dinner, right, Daddy?" He looked at Sophia's back. at the careful way she plated the food. By the way, she'd remembered something his daughter had said in passing and turned it into comfort. "Yes," he said. "I'm staying." Dinner was quieter than Marco expected. Isabella chattered between bites, telling him about butterflies and books, and how Miss Sophia had let her help water the plants on the balcony, even though it was cold. Sophia ate slowly, barely speaking unless Isabella asked her a direct question. She kept her eyes down. Professional, appropriate, it bothered him. Not because she was doing anything wrong, because she did everything right. She laughed at Isabella's jokes. She reminded her to use her napkin. She asked Marco polite questions about his day that were vague enough not to pry. And when Isabella spilled water across the table, Sophia was up in seconds, cleaning it with a calm efficiency that never made his daughter feel bad. "Daddy has important meetings," Isabella said suddenly, looking at Sophia. "He talks to lots of people about business things." Sophia smiled. "That sounds very impressive." "He's the boss of everything," Isabella continued proudly. "Everyone listens to him." Marco's jaw tightened. He watched Sophia's face carefully, waiting for the moment of recognition, the flash of fear, the calculation. It never came. She just smiled at his daughter and said, "Well, he's lucky to have you to come home to." Isabella beamed. After dinner, Isabella insisted on showing Sophia her butterfly drawing. Marco watched from the doorway of his daughter's bedroom as Sophia knelt on the floor, genuinely admiring the crayon mess of wings and colors. "This one's beautiful," Sophia said, pointing to a blue butterfly. "What's her name?" "Luna," Isabella said. "Because she flies at night. Perfect name." Isabella hugged the drawing to her chest, then looked at Sophia with sudden seriousness. "Miss Sophia, do you have a family?" Sophia's smile faltered, just for a second. "I have a brother," she said quietly. "He lives far away. Do you miss him?" "Every day." Isabella reached out and patted Sophia's hand. The gesture was so tender, so much like something his mother would have done, that Marco felt his chest crack. "You can share my daddy," Isabella said matter-of-factly. "He's really good at hugs." Sophia laughed, but it sounded tight. "That's very sweet, Isabella. I mean it. You're here all the time anyway. And you make him smile." Sophia's eyes flicked to the doorway, to Marco. Their gazes met. He should have looked away, should have said something to break the moment. He didn't. "Bedtime, Principessa," Marco said finally, his voice rougher than intended. Isabella pouted but didn't argue. She hugged Sophia goodnight, then reached for Marco. He carried her to bed, tucking her in with the practiced ease of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. "I like her, Daddy," Isabella whispered as he kissed her forehead. "I know. She's not like the other nannies." "No," Marco agreed quietly. "She's not. Are you going to make her leave?" His hand stilled on her hair. "Why would I do that?" "Because you always do," Isabella said, eyes already drooping. "But I don't want her to go. She feels like she's supposed to be here." Marco's throat tightened. He stayed until Isabella fell asleep, then walked back into the living room. Sophia was cleaning the kitchen. She'd washed the dishes, wiped down the counters, put everything back exactly where it belonged. "You don't have to do that," Marco said. She jumped slightly, then smiled. Force of habit. He watched her dry her hands on a towel, watched her tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, watched her avoid his eyes. "Isabella really likes you," he said. "I really like her," Sophia replied. "She's a special kid." "She is." Marco stepped closer. "You're good with her." "Thank you." Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable. Just waited. "Miss Chen." "Sophia," she corrected softly. "You can call me Sophia." His eyes darkened. "Sophia." She looked up at him then. Really looked. And for just a moment, he saw something flicker in her expression. Something that wasn't professional, wasn't careful. Something that matched the heat building in his chest. "I should go," she said quickly. "It's late. My driver will take you. I can take the subway." "No." His voice came out harder than intended. "You won't." She blinked. "Mr. Santini, Marco," he said. "If I'm calling you Sophia, you call me Marco." Her lips parted. She looked flustered, young, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with makeup or effort. "Okay," she whispered. "Marco." The way she said his name did something to him he wasn't prepared for. He stepped back, shoving his hands in his pockets to keep from reaching for her. My driver. 10 minutes. She nodded and grabbed her bag from the hook by the door. As she walked past him, he caught the scent of her shampoo. Something clean. Something that didn't belong in his world of cigar smoke and expensive cologne. Something he wanted to drown in. Sophia. She paused at the door. Thank you, he said. For dinner. For remembering. She smiled. Small. Real. Anytime. Then she was gone. Marco stood in his empty penthouse, staring at the closed door. Somewhere behind him, Isabella's soft breathing drifted from her bedroom. The kitchen still smelled like lemons and rosemary, and for the first time in 4 years, his home felt like more than just a place he kept his daughter safe. It felt like something he didn't have a name for, something that terrified him more than any rival ever had. The next morning, Marco woke to his phone buzzing. 6 a.m. Too early for anything good. He answered without looking at the screen. What? We have a problem. Luca's voice. His second in command. The man who'd been with him since they were teenagers, running errands for his father. Marco sat up. Talk. Someone's been asking questions. About your household. His blood went cold. What kind of questions? Staff. Routines. Security schedules. Luca paused. And the nanny. Marco was out of bed in seconds, pulling on clothes with sharp, violent movements. Who's asking? Dante Russo's people. Marco's jaw clenched. Dante Russo. Ambitious. Ruthless. Looking to move up in the organization by taking down anyone he perceived as competition. When? 2 days ago, our guy at the employment agency caught wind of it yesterday. Marco's mind raced. 2 days ago, that's when Sophia had started taking Isabella to the park instead of keeping her inside the building. I'm on my way. Send 2 men to the penthouse. Nobody gets in or out without clearance. Already done. Marco hung up and dressed in under 3 minutes. Dark suit, shoulder holster. Gun, he prayed, he'd never have to use it in front of his daughter. He walked quietly past Isabella's room. Still asleep. Good. But when he reached the living room, he stopped. Sophia was already there. She sat on the couch, hands folded in her lap, wearing a simple gray dress that somehow made her look both professional and heartbreakingly lovely. You're early, Marco said. She stood. Isabella had a nightmare last night. She called me. I thought I should be here when she woke up. His chest tightened. You came back? She needed me. 3 words. Simple. True. And they made Marco realize something that sent ice through his veins. Someone was asking questions about Sophia. Which meant someone had noticed her. Which meant she was already a target. Marco stared at Sophia for a long moment, watching the morning light catch in her hair. She looked tired. Like she hadn't slept after Isabella's call. Like she'd thrown on the first dress she could find and rushed across the city in the dark. For his daughter. For a job that paid well but not well enough to justify 2 emergency calls. What was the nightmare about? He asked quietly. Sophia's expression softened. Her mother. She dreamed that she came back, but then disappeared again before Isabella could hug her. Something sharp twisted in Marco's gut. He'd tried so hard to shield Isabella from that pain, from the abandonment, from the truth that her mother had chosen freedom over her own child. What did you tell her? Those nightmares can't hurt us. That the people who love her are real and staying. Sophia paused, her voice dropping. And that you would never, ever leave her. Marco felt his throat tighten. He turned toward the window, hands curling into fists at his sides. Thank you, he said. For coming back. Of course. He heard her move behind him. Heard the soft pad of her feet on the marble floor as she headed toward the kitchen. Sophia. She stopped. We need to talk. Later. After Isabella goes to school. She turned, concerned, flickering in her eyes. Is everything okay? No, he thought. Nothing is okay. Because someone dangerous knows your name now. Because you're standing in my home wearing a dress that makes you look like something precious. Because my daughter loves you and I'm starting to understand why that terrifies me. Just some changes to the security protocol, he said instead. Nothing to worry about. But he saw it in her face. The intelligence behind those warm eyes. She knew he was lying. She just didn't call him on it. Isabella woke up 20 minutes later, puffy-eyed and clingy. She ran straight to Sophia, burying her face in the nanny's shoulder. "You came back," Isabella whispered. "Of course I did. Sweet girl, I promised, didn't I?" Marco watched from the doorway as Sophia comforted his daughter with practiced ease. "Daddy?" Isabella finally noticed him. She squirmed out of Sophia's arms and ran to him instead. He lifted her easily, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Bad dream, Principessa?" She nodded against his neck. "Miss Sophia made it better?" Another nod. He met Sophia's eyes over his daughter's head. Something passed between them. Something unspoken but heavy with meaning. "Thank you," his expression said. "Always," hers replied. After breakfast pancakes that Sophia made, from scratch while Isabella helped measure ingredients, Marco's driver took them to school. But this time, Marco went with them. Sophia noticed immediately. She sat in the front passenger seat while Isabella chattered beside him in the back, and he felt her eyes on him through the rearview mirror. "You usually don't come to drop off," she said carefully. "Thought I would today. Because of the security protocol changes?" "Smart. Too smart. Yes." She turned slightly, studying his face. "Marco, if something's wrong, not here," he said quietly, cutting her off with a look. She understood, pressed her lips together and faced forward again, but her hands twisted in her lap, small, anxious, human. At the school, Marco walked Isabella to the door himself, something he rarely did. He knelt down, cupping her small face in his large hands. "I love you. You know that?" "I know, Daddy." She giggled. "You're being weird today." "Just making sure." Isabella kissed his cheek, then looked past him to where Sophia stood waiting by the car. "Daddy?" "I think Miss Sophia is sad." Marco's brow furrowed. "Why do you think that?" "Like she's pretending." Isabella tilted her head. "You should make her happy. You're good at making me happy. Out of the mouths of babes." "I'll try, Principessa." "Promise?" "Promise." Isabella hugged him one more time, then ran inside, her little backpack bouncing with each step. Marco stood, turning back toward the car, toward Sophia, who was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. When they got back into the car, the silence felt different. Heavier. "My penthouse," Marco told the driver. "But take the long route." "Yes, sir." Sophia glanced at him. "The long route?" "We're being followed." Her entire body went rigid. "What?" Marco's eyes flicked to the side mirror. A black sedan, 3 cars back. It had been there since they left his building. "Don't turn around," he said calmly. "Don't give them anything." Who would follow us?" "People who shouldn't know your name." His jaw clenched. "But apparently do." The color drained from Sophia's face. "Marco, I don't understand. I'm just the nanny." "Why would anyone?" "Because you're not just the nanny." His voice came out rougher than intended. "Not anymore." She stared at him. He could see her pulse jumping in her throat. The driver took a sudden turn, sharp, practiced. 2 more quick turns, and they lost the sedan. But Marco knew it was temporary. They'd been made, noticed, targeted, which meant everything had just changed. Back at the penthouse, Marco's men were already there. 2 in the lobby, 2 on his private floor. Luca stood in the living room, arms crossed, expression grim. Sophia stepped inside and stopped when she saw them. All the guns, all the hard faces, all the danger she'd somehow managed to ignore for 3 weeks. "Marco?" Her voice shook. He placed a hand on the small of her back. Gentle, protective. "Inside, now." She walked ahead of him on unsteady legs. Luca's eyes tracked her movement, then flicked to Marco with a question he didn't ask out loud. Marco answered it anyway with a single look. "She's off limits." Luca nodded once. In the office, Marco closed the door. Sophia stood in the middle of the room, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold herself together. "Sit," Marco said. "I don't want to sit. I want you to tell me what the hell is going on." He almost smiled. There it was, the fire underneath all that softness. "Someone is asking questions about you, about Isabella, about our routines." "Who?" "Dante Russo." Marco hesitated. How much to tell her? How much truth could she handle? "He's ambitious, dangerous, And he's looking for leverage. Leverage against you? Yes. She shook her head slowly. But I'm nobody. I'm just… Stop saying that. Marco stepped toward her. You're not nobody. Then what am I? The question came out raw, desperate. He looked at her, really looked at her. At the woman who'd walked into his home 3 weeks ago and somehow become essential. Who made his daughter laugh. Who remembered his mother's recipes. Who came back in the middle of the night because Isabella needed her. Who was about to become a target because of him. You're someone I need to protect, he said finally. Sophia's breath caught. I didn't sign up for this. I know. I just wanted a job, a way to pay my brother's medical bills. Her voice broke. I didn't want danger. I didn't want guns. I know, Marco repeated, softer this time, but it's too late. She looked up at him, eyes shining with unshed tears. Why? Because they've seen you. Because you're connected to me now. Because… He stopped himself. Because what? Because Isabella loves you. Because I can't unsee the way you fit into our lives. Because the thought of anything happening to you makes me want to burn the entire city down. Because you're under my roof, he said instead. That makes you my responsibility. Sophia swallowed hard. For how long? Until the threat is gone. And if it doesn't go away? Marco's eyes darkened. Then I make it go away. The promise in his voice was absolute, final. The voice of a man who'd made people disappear before. Sophia should have been terrified. Instead, she felt something else entirely. Something warm and dangerous blooming in her chest. I need to call my brother, she said quietly. Tell him I might not be able to visit this weekend like I planned. Where does he live? Philadelphia. He's in a treatment facility. Chronic illness. I visit every other weekend. Marco nodded. You'll still go. But you just said, you'll go, he repeated. With 2 of my men. In an armored car. And you'll stay in a hotel I own, not wherever you usually stay. She bristled. I can't afford… I'm not asking you to. I don't want your money. It's not about money. He stepped close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. It's about keeping you alive. Her breath hitched. This close, she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Could smell his cologne, cedar, and something darker. Could feel the heat radiating from his body. This is insane, she whispered. Yes. I should quit. I should walk away right now. You should, he agreed. Neither of them moved. But I can't, she said. Isabella needs… This isn't about Isabella. His hand came up slowly, giving her time to move away. She didn't. His fingers touched her chin, tilting her face toward his. Is it… Sophia? Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer and a curse. I don't know, she admitted. Liar, her eyes flashed. You don't know me. I know you came back at 2 a.m. for a child who isn't yours. I know you make pancakes from scratch because Isabella mentioned once that she missed her grandmother's cooking. I know you read every princess voice differently because you think it matters. I know you're paying for your brother's treatment alone. I know… Stop. Her voice cracked. He didn't. I know you're terrified right now, but you haven't run. I know you're standing here arguing with me instead of walking away. I know. She kissed him. It was sudden, impulsive, desperate. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him down, and her lips met his with a hunger that shocked them both. For 1 second, Marco froze. Then he took over. His hands cupped her face as he deepened the kiss, taking control with the same certainty he applied to everything else in his life. His tongue swept into her mouth and she made a small sound, half gasp, half moan that sent fire straight through him. He backed her against the desk, one hand sliding into her hair, the other gripping her hip. She arched into him, all softness and heat and everything he'd been denying himself for weeks. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marco rested his forehead against hers. This is a bad idea, he murmured. Terrible, she agreed. You work for me. I know. You should be off limits. I know that too. He pulled back just enough to look at her. Her lips were swollen. Her eyes were dark. Her chest rose and fell with rapid breaths. If I start this, he said quietly, I won't stop. I won't be able to. She held his gaze. I'm not asking you to stop. Something in his chest cracked open. He kissed her again, slower this time. Deeper, a promise instead of a question. When a knock sounded at the door, they broke apart reluctantly. "Boss," Luca's voice. "We have movement." Marco's expression hardened instantly. The lover disappeared. The predator returned. "Talk," he called out. Luca opened the door but kept his eyes carefully averted from Sophia's disheveled state. "Russo's men just left the building across the street. They had cameras pointed at your entrance." Marco's jaw clenched. How long? At least 12 hours. Which meant they'd seen Sophia arrive in the middle of Rhone, the night. Seen her leave this morning. Seen her come back. They knew. "Sweep the building," Marco ordered. "Find every device, and send 2 more men to Isabella's school. I want eyes on her every second." "Already done." "Good." Marco turned to Sophia. "You're staying here, in the penthouse, until this is over." "Marco, I can't just—" "Not negotiable." His tone left no room for argument. "You leave. You become an easier target. You stay. I can protect you." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." Sophia looked between Marco and Luca. At the guns. At the grim expressions. At the world she'd stumbled into without meaning to. "Okay," she whispered. Marco nodded once. "Luca, have someone get her things from her apartment. Everything she needs." "I'll send Tony." "And Luca?" Marco's voice dropped dangerously low. "Find Dante Russo. I want to have a conversation." The kind of conversation, his tone implied, that people didn't walk away from. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. Hours later, after Luca left and the penthouse settled into tense quiet, Sophia stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the city below. Marco watched her from the doorway. The way she hugged herself, the tremble in her shoulders she was trying to hide. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. She didn't turn. "For what?" "For pulling you into this." "You didn't pull me into anything. I walked by myself." She paused. "But I need to know something." "What?" "That kiss. Was it real or was it just adrenaline?" Marco crossed the room slowly. When he reached her, he turned to face him. "I don't do adrenaline," he said. "I don't do anything impulsive. I don't do anything without thinking it through first." His hand came up to cup her cheek. "That kiss was the least impulsive thing I've ever done." "How is that possible?" "Because I've been thinking about it for weeks." Her breath caught. "Since the first night you made dinner," he continued. "Since you laughed at Isabella's terrible joke about the dinosaur. Since you hummed while washing dishes and didn't know I was watching. Since—" "Stop," she whispered. "You're going to make me—" "Make you what?" "Believe you." His thumb traced her lower lip. "Good." This time when he kissed her, it wasn't desperate. It was certain, a claiming, a promise. And when he pulled back, he kept her close. "I'll keep you safe," he murmured against her hair. "Both of you." "How can you promise that?" "Because I've never failed to protect the people I love." Sophia should have bristled, should have argued. Instead, she let herself lean into his chest. Let herself feel safe for the first time in years. Even if it was an illusion, even if the danger was real. Because Marco Santini's arms felt like the only place in the world she wanted to be. The next 3 days passed in a strange, suspended reality. Sophia lived in Marco's penthouse like a ghost caught between 2 worlds, the normal life she'd left behind and the dangerous one she'd stumbled into. During the day, she was still the nanny. She helped Isabella with homework, made lunches shaped like animals, read stories with different voices for each character. But now armed men stood outside the door. Cameras tracked every window, and Marco never left for work without checking the security feeds first. During the nights, everything changed. After Isabella fell asleep, Sophia would find Marco on the balcony or in his office, tension radiating from his shoulders like heat. Sometimes she'd bring him coffee. Sometimes she'd just sit quietly nearby. And sometimes more often as the days passed, he'd reach for her hand and pull her close, holding her like she was the only thing keeping him grounded. They didn't talk about the kiss. They didn't talk about what was happening between them. They didn't need to. It was there in every look, every touch, every moment of silence that felt louder than words. On the 4th morning, Isabella changed everything. Sophia was making breakfast when Isabella padded into the kitchen, still in her pajamas. hair sticking up in wild directions. "Miss Sophia?" "Yes, sweet girl." "Can I ask you something?" Sophia smiled, cracking eggs into a bowl. "Always." "Do you love my daddy?" The whisk clattered against the counter. Sophia turned slowly. Isabella stood there, clutching her stuffed rabbit, eyes wide and serious, and far too perceptive for a 6-year-old. "Isabella, that's a very big question. But do you?" Sophia's heart hammered. "Why are you asking?" "Because he's different now. He smiles more. He doesn't look so tired. And he looks at you the way Prince Philip looks at Princess Aurora in Sleeping Beauty." Isabella climbed onto a stool. "Like you're the most important person in the whole world." Sophia's throat tightened. "Your daddy looks at you that way. That's different. That's daddy love." Isabella swung her legs. "I mean the other kind. The kind in the movies." Before Sophia could answer, Marco's voice came from the hallway. "The kind in the movies usually ends with someone getting their heart broken, Principessa." Isabella spun around. "Daddy, you're supposed to be sleeping." "Hard to sleep when my daughter is interrogating my staff about fairy tales." But his eyes were on Sophia, dark and unreadable. "I wasn't interrogating," Isabella protested. "I was just asking if—" "Isabella." Marco's tone was gentle but firm. "Go get dressed for school." She pouted but obeyed, sliding off the stool. As she passed Sophia, she whispered just loud enough for both adults to hear. "I think you should marry her, Daddy." Then she skipped away, leaving a silence so heavy it felt like gravity had doubled. Sophia couldn't look at him. She turned back to the eggs, whisking frantically, trying to pretend her hands weren't shaking. "She's 6, Sophia said into the silence. "She doesn't understand. She understands more than you think." Sophia's hands stilled. Marco moved behind her, close enough that she could feel his body heat, though he wasn't touching her yet. "She sees the way I look at you," he said quietly, "because I've stopped trying to hide it." Sophia closed her eyes. "Marco, she sees the way you look at me too. We can't, this isn't—" Sophia turned to face him. "I work for you. I take care of your daughter. This is inappropriate. It's already too late." The certainty in his voice stopped her cold. We've barely— Do you think it matters?" His hand came up to cup her face. "Do you think the fact that we've been careful changes anything? You're already under my skin, Sophia. You're already in my head. You're already the first thing I think about when I wake up and the last thing I think about before I sleep." Her breath came faster. It's proximity. It's the danger. It's you." He leaned in, his forehead touching hers. "Just you." She wanted to argue, wanted to be logical, wanted to protect herself from the inevitable heartbreak, but then he kissed her, and logic died. This kiss was different from the others, slower, deeper, like he was trying to memorize her, like he was afraid this might be the last time. When they broke apart, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his entire expression hardened. "What?" Sophia asked, chest tight with sudden fear. "Luca found Russo." 30 minutes later, Marco was in the back of an SUV with 3 of his men. Luca sat beside him, reviewing intel on a tablet. "He's holed up in a warehouse in Red Hook," Luca said. 4 men with him, maybe 5. Weapons? Armed. But not expecting you to come in person. Marco's jaw clenched. "That's the point." Luca glanced at him. "Boss, you sure about this? You could send no." Marco's voice was ice. "He pointed cameras at my home. He threatened my daughter. He stopped himself. He crossed lines that don't get uncrossed." Luca was smart enough not to ask what Marco had almost said, but the knowing look in his eyes said he'd heard it anyway. Back at the penthouse, Sophia paced the living room while Isabella played with dolls, oblivious to the tension crackling through the air. 2 of Marco's men stood by the door. Another monitored the security feeds. All of them avoided her eyes. "Where did he go?" Sophia asked for the 3rd time. "He'll be back soon, ma'am," one of the guards said. "That's not what I asked." The guard shifted uncomfortably. "We're not authorized to." "I don't care what you're authorized to do. Tell me where Marco went." The guards exchanged glances. Isabella looked up from her dolls. "Miss Sophia, are you worried about Daddy?" Sophia's heart clenched. She forced a smile. "No, sweet girl. I'm sure he's fine." But she wasn't sure. Not at all. Because she'd seen the look in Marco's eyes before he left. The cold, lethal focus that had nothing to do with the gentle man who kissed her in the kitchen, and everything to do with the Mafia boss who'd built an empire on fear. The warehouse was exactly what Marco expected. Dirty, dark, smelling of rust and old violence. Dante Russo stood in the center with 4 men, all armed, all tensed when Marco walked in. Santini. Russo's smile was all teeth. I heard you'd been looking for me. Not looking. Marco's voice was calm. Controlled. Found. Russo's smile faltered. Just slightly. Marco stopped 10 feet away, hands in his pockets, completely at ease despite being outnumbered. Behind him, Luca and the others fanned out, cutting off exits. You've been making mistakes, Dante. Have I? Pointing cameras at my home. Following my staff. Asking questions about my daughter. Marco's eyes were black ice. Those are the kind of mistakes men don't recover from. Russo laughed. Your staff. That's cute. Is that what you're calling her? Marco didn't react. Didn't move. But something in the air shifted. The pretty little nanny? Russo continued, emboldened by Marco's silence. Lives with you now, doesn't she? Very cozy. Very convenient. Say her name, Marco said quietly. I want to hear you say it so I know exactly what I'm killing you for. Russo's smile vanished. You think you can threaten me? You think because you had a good run, because your father left you an empire, that you're untouchable? He stepped forward. You're soft now, Santini. Everyone knows it. The great Marco Santini, brought down by a 6-year-old and a... Marco moved. 1 second he was 10 feet away. The next, his fist connected with Russo's jaw with a crack that echoed through the warehouse. Russo went down hard. His men reached for their guns. Marco's men were faster. 4 shots. 4 bodies. Clean, professional, over in seconds. Russo scrambled backward, hand on his bleeding mouth, eyes wide with shock and fear. Marco stood over him, perfectly calm, not even breathing hard. Here's what's going to happen. Marco said conversationally. You're going to disappear. Tonight. You're going to take whatever money you have and leave the city. Leave the state. Leave the fucking country if you're smart. Because if I see you again, if I hear your name again, if I even think you're breathing the same air as my daughter, or anyone I care about, I will make you beg for the mercy of a quick death. Russo spat blood. You can't, the families won't. The families answer to me. Marco crouched down, getting eye level. Did you forget that part? Did you forget that when my father died, I was the one they came to? That I've been running this city since I was 25 years old? That every favor, every connection, every piece of leverage flows through me? Russo's face went white. You thought I was soft because I have a daughter, because I don't parade my power around like some cheap gangster in a movie. Marco's smile was terrifying. But that's what makes me dangerous, Dante. I don't need to prove anything. I just need to decide you're done. And you're done. Marco stood, nodding to Luca. Get him out of my city. I don't care how. Luca grabbed Russo by the collar, hauling him up. As they dragged him away, Russo shouted, She's just a nanny. She's nobody. You're risking everything for. Marco turned slowly. She's mine, he said simply. That makes her everything. When Marco returned to the penthouse 3 hours later, dawn was breaking over the city. He was exhausted, blood-stained. Every muscle in his body ached. But it was done. Russo was gone. The threat was neutralized. His family was safe. He walked in quietly, expecting everyone to be asleep. Instead, he found Sophia curled up on the couch, still in yesterday's clothes, eyes red from crying. She looked up when he entered. Relief and anger warred across her face. You're okay, she whispered. I'm okay. She stood on shaky legs. You're covered in blood. Not mine. She crossed the room and hit him. A small, ineffective punch to his chest that barely registered. You left, she said, voice breaking. You left and you didn't tell me where you were going or if you were coming back, and I. He caught her hands gently. Sophia, I thought you were dead. The words came out in a sob. I thought someone had killed you and I'd have to tell Isabella that her father wasn't coming home and I couldn't breathe. Marco pulled her against his chest, holding her while she shook. I'm sorry, he murmured into her hair. I'm sorry. Don't do that again. Don't leave me like that. Okay, promise me. He pulled back, cupping her face in his hands. I can't promise I'll never be in danger, but I can promise I'll always fight to come back. To you, to Isabella. I'll always come back. She searched his eyes, then kissed him. Hard, desperate, claiming. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she whispered, I love you. Marco froze. I know it's crazy, she continued. I know it's too fast and inappropriate, and I'm your employee, and this is probably just Stockholm Syndrome or proximity, or it's not. How do you know? Because I've felt it too. His thumbs traced her cheekbones. Since the first night you made my mother's chicken. Since you came back at 2 a.m. For Isabella. Since you stood in my kitchen looking like you belonged there. I've been falling for you and trying to fight it and failing spectacularly. Her breath hitched. Marco, I love you, Sophia Chen. And I'm done pretending I don't. She kissed him again. Softer this time. Slower. A promise instead of desperation. From the hallway, a small voice said, Does this mean you're getting married? They broke apart to find Isabella standing there in her pajamas, grinning from ear to ear. Isabella, Marco started. You're supposed to be asleep. I heard voices. She ran over, hugging both their legs. So are you? Are you getting married? Marco looked at Sophia. Sophia looked at Marco. Would you want that? Sophia asked the little girl carefully. If your daddy and I got married? Isabella nodded so hard her curls bounced. Yes. Then you'd never leave. Then you'd be my real mommy. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. Marco lifted Isabella into his arms, then held out his other hand to Sophia. The lady makes a compelling argument, he said softly. Sophia laughed through her tears. This is insane. Completely. We've known each other for 3 weeks. 21 days, he corrected. But who's counting? I'm still your employee. Not for long. People will talk. Let them. Isabella bounced in his arms. So is that a yes? Are you getting married? Marco looked at Sophia. Really looked at her. At the woman who'd walked into his life as a nanny and become so much more. Who loved his daughter like her own. Who'd faced down danger without running. Who'd made his house feel like a home. That depends, Marco said. On whether Sophia says yes. Sophia stared at him. Are you actually proposing right now? In your entryway? Covered in blood? With your daughter as a witness? Unless you want me to do the whole down on one knee thing. I can do that. Though I should probably shower first. She laughed. Really laughed. The kind of laugh that lit up her entire face. You're ridiculous. Is that a yes? She looked at Isabella's hopeful face, then at Marco's steady, certain gaze, and she realized something. She'd spent her whole life trying to be invisible, trying to stay safe by staying small, trying to protect herself by never wanting too much. But Marco saw her. All of her. And he wasn't afraid. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Isabella squealed so loud it probably woke the entire building. Marco kissed Sophia again, his daughter laughing between them, and for the first time in his life, he felt completely, terrifyingly happy. 6 months later, the wedding was small, private. Just family Marco's people, Sophia's brother who Marco had quietly moved to a better treatment facility, and Isabella, who insisted on being the flower girl and the ring bearer because someone has to make sure daddy doesn't mess it up. They got married in the garden of Marco's estate upstate, the same place his parents had married 40 years ago. Isabella stood between them during the ceremony, one hand in each of theirs, grinning like she'd personally arranged the whole thing. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Isabella covered her eyes and giggled. Marco kissed Sophia anyway, slow, deep, a promise of forever. That night, after the guests left and Isabella finally fell asleep in her new bedroom, Marco found Sophia on the balcony, staring at the stars. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, pulling her against his chest. "Regrets yet?" he murmured into her hair. "Not even one. I'm still dangerous, you know. Still in life, still," she turned, in his arms. "I know who you are, Marco Santini. All of it. The good, the bad, the terrifying. And I'm still here. Why? Because you're also the man who reads bedtime stories in funny voices. Who remembers my brother's birthday? Who looks at me like I'm the most important person in the world?" She touched his face gently. "Because you're mine." His breath caught. "Say that again." "You're mine," she repeated. "My husband. My family. Mine. Marco kissed her like a drowning man finding air. When they finally came up for breath, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he whispered. "God help me. I love you so much it terrifies me." "Good," she said, smiling. "Be terrified of me. Always." From inside they heard Isabella's sleepy voice calling, "Daddy? Sophia? I can't find my stuffed rabbit." Sophia laughed. "That's my cue." But Marco caught her hand. "Our cue. We're a team now, remember?" She squeezed his fingers. Best team ever. They walked inside together, hand in hand, to help their daughter find her rabbit and tuck her back into bed. And as Marco watched Sophia sing Isabella to sleep, her voice soft and sure and full of love, he realized something. He'd built an empire on fear and power, and carefully calculated moves. But the best thing he'd ever done, the bravest thing he'd ever done, was let a gentle woman with kind eyes and a stubborn heart walk into his life and refuse to leave. She wasn't just the nanny anymore. She was his wife, his partner, his home, and he would protect that with everything he had, forever. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.